The massive amphitheater of Station Nexus Prime stretched across multiple levels, its crystalline architecture gleaming under artificial starlight. Representatives from 1,500 species had gathered for the most prestigious event in galactic civilization, the annual Deathworld Survivors Conference. This wasn't just any gathering. It was where the galaxy's most elite civilizations displayed their ultimate badge of honor. Having evolved on and conquered planets so hostile, they actively tried to exterminate life. The opening ceremonies had concluded hours ago, featuring holographic displays of the most notorious deathworlds known to galactic science. Now came the real spectacle, the presentations, where each species would boast of their homeworld's lethal characteristics and their people's incredible survival achievements. Commander ZYX Tal of the mighty Korthak Empire approached the central podium, his towering crystalline exoskeleton catching and refracting the amphitheater's lights into prismatic rainbows. The Korthak were legends throughout the galaxy, 8-foot-tall beings of living crystal who had somehow evolved consciousness within their silicon-based structures. Esteemed survivors, his voice resonated through the translation matrix, creating harmonics that made the very air vibrate. Behold the glory of Korthak Prime. A massive holographic projection materialized above the amphitheater, showing a world that looked like something from the nightmares of lesser species. Crimson storms raged across continents while acidic precipitation fell in sheets that could dissolve starship hulls. For 8 months of our 40 standard-hour day cycle, sulfuric acid rain falls with the consistency of liquid metal. ZYX Tal continued, his exoskeleton flaring brighter with pride. The very ground beneath our crystalline roots shifts constantly in tectonic fury that can split continents overnight. Our predators. The hologram shifted to show massive, amorphous creatures that seem to be living acid, can dissolve pure titanium in seconds. The assembled representatives burst into appreciative applause, their various forms of approval creating a symphony of clicks, chirps, roars, and harmonic frequencies. The Korthak were universally respected as one of the most resilient species in known space. Ambassador Velterra of the hegemony rose next, her 6 muscular arms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. Standing nearly 10 feet tall and built like a living siege engine, she embodied the raw physical power of her people. The Korthak speak of acid rain? Her voice carried the rumble of tectonic plates grinding together. How charmingly quaint. The holographic display shifted to show Vel'Thas, a world that seemed to exist in a state of perpetual gravitational chaos. Our homeworld experiences gravitational storms that fluctuate between crushing compression and explosive decompression. We evolved under 13 times galactic standard gravity while dodging gravity wells that materialize without warning and can compact a starship into a marble-sized sphere. Every step our ancestors took was a battle against forces that could pancake lesser species into atomic paste. The crowd's appreciation was palpable. The Veltheri were the galaxy's ultimate physical specimens, capable of casual feats of strength that bordered on the miraculous. The presentations continued for hours. The Zephyrians, ethereal beings who survived in atmospheres of pure methane while dodging lightning storms that could power small cities. The Thermal Collective, who had evolved in volcanic hellscapes where the cool seasons still maintained ambient temperatures of 400 degrees Celsius. The Cryonian Empire, masters of frozen worlds where liquid nitrogen was considered a warm summer breeze. Each species brought their own unique horror story. Worlds with toxic atmospheres that could kill in seconds. Predator-filled ecosystems where every organism was optimized for maximum lethality. Geological instabilities that made planetary survival a daily miracle. The pattern was consistent. Each representative would approach the podium with the swagger of ultimate survivors, display their world's lethal characteristics, and bask in the admiration of their peers. These were the galactic elite, the species who had faced the universe's worst offerings and emerged victorious. Then, near the end of the presentations, something unprecedented happened. A small figure approached the podium, moving with quiet confidence despite being dwarfed by nearly every other being in the amphitheater. The crowd's various conversations died away, not out of respect, but out of sheer confusion. The being was tiny by galactic standards, barely reaching the midsection of most representatives. Its skin appeared soft and vulnerable, lacking any visible armor plating, crystalline structure, or protective scales. Sparse hair covered only the upper portion of its head, and it wore simple woven fabrics rather than the elaborate protective gear most species required. Most shocking of all, it appeared to have no obvious evolutionary adaptations for surviving hostile environments. No claws, no natural weapons, no environmental protection systems. It looked, by galactic standards, like something that should have gone extinct within the first generation of evolution. "Greetings, fellow survivors," the figure said in carefully pronounced galactic standard, though its accent suggested this wasn't its native language. "I am Dr. Elena Rodriguez, representing the species known as humans from the planet designated Earth." A ripple of confused whispers spread through the amphitheater. In the vast database of galactic civilization, few had encountered references to either Earth or humans. They certainly didn't appear in any registry of Deathworld survivors. Dr. Rodriguez stood calmly at the podium, seemingly unbothered by the mixture of confusion and barely contained amusement from the assembled representatives. "I understand this is a gathering for species who have successfully survived what you term Deathworlds," she continued conversationally. "We received your conference invitation and were curious about your classification standards." Commander ZYXTAL's exoskeleton began producing the crystalline equivalent of laughter, a sound like wind chimes in a hurricane. "Little soft skin," his voice carried undisguised condescension. "I believe there has been some administrative error. This assembly is exclusively for species who have conquered the most lethally hostile environments in known space. Perhaps you intended to attend the Agricultural Development Symposium? I believe they're discussing crop rotation techniques in Conference Hall 7. Laughter erupted throughout the amphitheater, a cacophony of species-specific amusement that ranged from roaring to chittering to harmonic resonance. Several delegates were performing what appeared to be their versions of pointing and laughing at the small, defenseless-looking human. Dr. Rodriguez waited patiently for the merriment to subside, her expression remaining pleasantly neutral throughout the mockery. "I see there may be some confusion," she said simply. "Perhaps you could clarify for me, what exactly constitutes a death world, according to galactic standards?" Ambassador Velterra's translator managed to convey perfectly the tone of someone explaining something obvious to a child. "Sweet little creature, a death world is a planetary environment so fundamentally hostile that it actively attempts to eliminate all life forms. We're discussing worlds with extreme meteorological phenomena, apex predator ecosystems, atmospheric toxicity, crushing gravitational forces, geological instability, environments where only the most perfectly adapted and supremely resilient species can achieve not just survival but evolutionary dominance." Dr. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully, occasionally making notations on a small handheld device. "Fascinating. And what would you consider the minimum threshold for qualifying as a death world? How many of these hostile factors does a planet need?" "At least 3 major death factors," Commander ZYXTAL announced with unmistakable pride. "My glorious Korthak Prime maintains acid precipitation, constant seismic instability, and predatory organisms capable of dissolving refined metals with their digestive secretions." "Most impressive," Dr. Rodriguez acknowledged. "And the rest of your worlds?" One by one, the representatives proudly recited their planet's lethal characteristics. Gravity storms and atmospheric pressure that could compact organic matter into paste. Methane tempests and electrical bombardment that made surface existence seemingly impossible. Temperature extremes and volcanic activity that defied most definitions of habitability. Dr. Rodriguez listened with apparent fascination, occasionally asking for clarification and continuing to make careful notes on her device. When the recitations concluded, she looked up with an expression the translators interpreted as genuine scientific curiosity. "Remarkable achievements, all of you," she said. "So if I understand correctly, galactic consensus considers a world with at least 3 major death factors to represent the threshold of hostile-to-life conditions?" "Precisely correct, soft creature," Commander ZYXTAL confirmed dismissively. "Now, if you'll excuse us, We have substantive matters to discuss among actual Deathworld survivors. I'm sure your people have accomplished admirable things in agricultural science. Dr. Rodriguez smiled, a simple facial expression that somehow caused several of the more predatory species in the audience to experience what their translators interpreted as inexplicable unease. Of course, she replied graciously. I certainly wouldn't want to waste the valuable time of such accomplished survivors. But perhaps, before I take my leave, you might find it amusing to hear about Earth? Purely for entertainment value, you understand. To hear what my soft little species considers challenging. The assembled representatives exchanged glances across the species divide. The diminutive humans seemed utterly harmless, almost pathetically vulnerable. There was something genuinely amusing about the prospect of hearing what this obviously non-threatening species might consider dangerous. Very well, Ambassador Velterra said with magnanimous condescension. Enlighten us about your peaceful garden world. Tiny human. We could use some light entertainment. Dr. Rodriguez's smile widened slightly, and for reasons none of them could articulate, a subtle chill seemed to settle over several dozen delegates. Oh, I think you'll find Earth quite fascinating, she said pleasantly. But first, let me establish a baseline for comparison. What's the highest death factor count any of your remarkable worlds has achieved? Just so I understand where Earth ranks on your scale. Commander ZYXTAL's exoskeleton flared with unmistakable pride. The magnificent Korthak homeworld has achieved 6 verified major death factors. The highest confirmed count in all of known galactic space. 6, Dr. Rodriguez repeated carefully, making a final notation on her device. How absolutely wonderful for you. She paused, consulting her notes one more time. Earth has. She appeared to be double-checking her calculations. Let me make sure I counted correctly. Carry the 2. Yes, that's right. 47 confirmed major death factors. The amphitheater fell into absolute, crystalline silence. I'm terribly sorry, Dr. Rodriguez said, noticing the stunned expressions throughout the assembly. Did my translator malfunction? Sometimes the linguistic matrix has difficulty with larger numerical concepts. Let me repeat. Earth maintains 47 verified major death factors by galactic classification standards. She looked around at the paralyzed faces of 1,000 species. Should I enumerate them for you, or would you prefer I begin with just the first dozen or so? The silence in the amphitheater stretched for nearly a full minute, an eternity in galactic diplomatic proceedings. Various species-specific stress indicators began manifesting throughout the assembly. Korthak exoskeletons dimming to protective opacity, Veltheri gravitational fields fluctuating erratically, and the crystalline shard delegates beginning to emit high-frequency resonance patterns that indicated acute psychological distress. Commander ZYXTAL was the first to recover enough functionality to reactivate his translation matrix, though his voice carried harmonics that hadn't been present before. Impossible, he declared, though his exoskeleton continued its involuntary dimming cycle. No planetary system could maintain 47 major death factors and still support complex evolutionary development. You must be experiencing some form of calculation error, little human. Perhaps your species uses different mathematical systems. Dr. Rodriguez consulted her handheld device again, her expression thoughtful and patient. Oh, you're absolutely right to express skepticism. It does sound quite improbable when stated so simply. I should clarify for accuracy. Those are 47 confirmed major death factors according to galactic classification standards. If we included what Earth science considers minor environmental hazards, we'd likely be here for several galactic standard cycles. She looked up from her device with that unsettling human smile. Shall I begin with our atmospheric composition? I think that provides an excellent baseline for understanding Earth's environmental parameters. Without waiting for permission, a presumption that would have been considered gravely insulting under normal diplomatic circumstances. Dr. Rodriguez activated a sophisticated holographic display system. The projection materialized above the podium in stunning detail. A blue-green world rotating slowly, its surface swirled with white cloud formations that seemed to move with hypnotic, almost threatening patterns. Earth's atmospheric composition is approximately 21% oxygen gas. She began in the same conversational tone one might use to discuss pleasant weather patterns. Now, I realize that most of your species have evolved to process various noble gas mixtures, methane compounds, or filtered atmospheric compositions, so you might not immediately recognize the implications of oxygen concentration at these levels. The holographic display shifted to show molecular diagrams and atmospheric composition charts. Oxygen, you see, is what our chemists classify as a universal solvent of organic matter. It's highly corrosive to most biological tissues, extremely reactive under temperature variations, and fundamentally toxic to the vast majority of galactic life forms. In essence, every breath a human takes is a controlled poisoning that our biology has somehow learned to not only tolerate but require for survival. Ambassador Velterra's 6 arms had begun making involuntary defensive gestures, and her translator was producing stuttering sounds that indicated severe conceptual processing difficulties. Your species, voluntarily breathes poison? As a life-sustaining requirement. Oh, absolutely, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed with evident enthusiasm. But that's merely the foundation layer of our atmospheric challenges. Earth's atmosphere also contains approximately 78% nitrogen, which causes nitrogen narcosis in our deep-sea environments, plus trace concentrations of carbon dioxide, which is acidic and can cause suffocation when concentrated, along with variable noble gas concentrations and atmospheric pressure differentials that fluctuate dramatically based on altitude, weather systems, and seasonal variations. The holographic Earth began displaying dynamic weather pattern overlays, showing massive spiral formations that dominated entire continental masses with hypnotic, predatory grace. Speaking of weather systems, Dr. Rodriguez continued cheerfully, these formations are what we call hurricanes, rotating atmospheric storm systems that generate sustained wind velocities exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. The most powerful specimens can achieve wind speeds over 400 kilometers per hour while maintaining structural integrity for weeks at a time. They're capable of completely leveling urban centers and can generate enough kinetic energy to power small civilizations. She gestured, and the display showed time-lapse formations of the massive storms. Earth experiences approximately a dozen major hurricane systems annually in some geographic regions. Oh, and these smaller, more concentrated formations are tornadoes. Essentially miniaturized hurricanes that can manifest with virtually no advance warning and contain wind velocities exceeding 500 kilometers per hour. They can appear anywhere, anytime, and can literally tear buildings apart at the molecular level. The display shifted to show different atmospheric phenomena, each more terrifying than the last. These white formations represent blizzard systems, essentially weaponized frozen precipitation that can accumulate to depths of 10 meters or more, while simultaneously reducing atmospheric temperature to levels that can freeze most organic compounds solid within minutes. And these darker formations are thunderstorm complexes, which generate electrical discharges measuring in the millions of volts, enough energy to power most space stations. The assembled delegates were now staring with what their various translators were interpreting as a mixture of fascination, horror, and complete psychological breakdown. But that's merely our atmospheric and meteorological challenges, Dr. Rodriguez continued, clearly warming to her subject with the enthusiasm of someone discussing a beloved hobby. I haven't even begun to address our geological instability factors. The holographic Earth transformed to display cross-sectional views, revealing the planet's internal structure. A roiling, dynamic core surrounded by massive moving plates that seem to shift with malevolent intelligence. Earth's surface consists of massive tectonic plates floating on a sea of molten rock, and these plates are in constant motion. This generates seismic activity, earthquakes, that can achieve sufficient magnitude to topple mountain ranges and trigger what we call tsunamis. Walls of water exceeding 30 meters in height that travel at aircraft velocities and can devastate coastlines across entire continents. She gestured again, and volcanic activity appeared on the display. Mountains literally exploding with atomic fury. We also maintain approximately 1,500 active volcanic systems that can detonate with the explosive force of nuclear weapons. Some of our larger volcanic events can trigger global climate modifications that persist for years. The ash clouds alone can block solar radiation across hemispheres. Commander ZYXDAL's exoskeleton was now producing continuous stress-clicking sounds that were approaching ultrasonic frequencies. Surely your species has developed protected habitation zones to avoid these catastrophic phenomena? Dr. Rodriguez looked genuinely confused by the question, as if he had suggested something completely illogical. Protected areas? Oh, you mean like underground bunkers or dome cities? No, humans build our major population centers directly adjacent to active volcanic systems, on primary earthquake fault lines, in the direct paths of seasonal hurricane activity, and throughout tornado-prone regions. Some of our most popular vacation destinations and tourist attractions are located in the most geologically and meteorologically active areas of the planet. She paused, apparently noticing the expressions of complete bewilderment and mounting terror throughout the amphitheater. Is something wrong? I've only covered the first 7 death factors, and you all appear to be experiencing some form of distress. Should I continue with the biological hazards? Or would you prefer to hear about our predator ecosystems first? Commander ZYXTAL had completely stopped his stress clicking. His crystalline exoskeleton had actually begun to shift into what xenobiologists recognized as the Korthak equivalent of catatonic shock. A defensive response so extreme it typically indicated exposure to existential-level threats. Around the amphitheater, other delegates were displaying similar signs of psychological breakdown. The Veltheri were involuntarily compressing into defensive spheres, several gaseous species were losing cohesion at their edges, and the collective consciousness species were fragmenting into individual panic responses. Perhaps, Commander ZYXTAL managed through his failing translation matrix, the harmonics in his voice indicating severe systemic stress. You could accelerate through some of the less intensive material to spare our computational resources. Dr. Rodriguez's expression registered what appeared to be genuine confusion, as if the request made no logical sense within her frame of reference. Less intensive? But we've barely scratched the surface of Earth's interesting characteristics. I haven't even begun to discuss our really fascinating environmental features yet. Her enthusiasm seemed to increase rather than diminish. Oh, I have an excellent idea. Let me describe our temperature variation systems. They're quite remarkable from a survival perspective. The holographic Earth underwent another transformation, now displaying thermal imaging that revealed temperature gradients across different planetary regions in what could only be described as a spectrum of lethality. Earth's surface temperature operates across what we consider a moderate range, from approximately positive 60 degrees Celsius in our desert regions down to negative 90 degrees Celsius at our polar extremes. Now, those desert areas I mentioned are massive geographic zones covered entirely in granulated silicate particles, where liquid water is so scarce that most carbon-based organisms can achieve complete dehydration and death within hours of exposure. She gestured enthusiastically as new thermal imagery appeared, showing landscapes that seemed to shimmer with malevolent heat. But the truly fascinating aspect is the rate of thermal variation. We have geographic locations where atmospheric temperature can fluctuate by 50 degrees Celsius within a single planetary rotation period. Some regions experience what our meteorologists call heat dome phenomena. Essentially, our atmosphere forms spontaneous thermal ovens that can elevate air temperature beyond the standard boiling point of dihydrogen monoxide. A delegate from the methane-breathing Zephyrian collective managed to generate enough coherent thought to activate their translation interface, though the output was fragmented and distorted. Boiling point of liquid water? Oh, absolutely, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed with evident delight. Water phase transitions are one of Earth's most dynamically dangerous environmental systems. Dihydrogen monoxide exists simultaneously as liquid precipitation, solid crystalline formations, and gaseous atmospheric vapor, and it transitions between these states constantly and unpredictably across our planetary surface. The holographic display began showing time-lapse sequences of water in its various deadly manifestations. Ice storms can coat entire regional areas in solid water formations thick enough to collapse architectural structures under sheer weight. Flash flood systems can transform completely dry geological formations into torrential liquid flows capable of displacing vehicles, buildings, and entire communities with virtually no advance warning. Conversely, drought conditions can eliminate all available water sources across continental areas for years at a time, creating uninhabitable wasteland zones. The display shifted to show massive atmospheric disturbance patterns that seem to move with predatory intelligence. These formations represent our monsoon systems, seasonal atmospheric patterns that concentrate months of precipitation into abbreviated time periods, generating widespread flooding across massive geographic areas. And these represent our arid zone phenomena, where the absence of atmospheric moisture creates sandstorm systems that can strip organic tissue from skeletal structures and bury entire settlements under tons of silicate particles. Dr. Rodriguez paused to take another sip from her portable hydration container, an action that now seemed ominously casual given the context of their discussion. Oh, and I should definitely mention our atmospheric density variations by altitude. At elevated geographic positions, oxygen concentration becomes so diluted that most humans cannot maintain biological functions without artificial atmospheric supplementation. The partial pressure differential can cause altitude sickness, cerebral edema, and rapid death from hypoxia. She gestured again, and the display showed various human settlement patterns across impossible terrain. Despite these challenges, humans have established permanent communities at these lethal altitudes. We call them mountain settlements, and people voluntarily choose to live there because they enjoy what we term scenic views. Essentially, they risk death daily for aesthetic appreciation. Ambassador Velterra's 6 arms had now completely wrapped around her torso in a protective configuration, and her translator was producing mechanical stuttering sounds that indicated complete system overload. Your species, deliberately chooses to inhabit zones of guaranteed lethality? Well, we've had to develop adaptation strategies. Dr. Rodriguez replied with the same enthusiasm one might use to discuss a pleasant hobby. Humans have demonstrated remarkable versatility in hostile environment colonization. We've successfully established permanent settlements in frozen wasteland regions where ground temperature never rises above freezing, in desert areas where surface sand reaches 70 degrees Celsius during daylight periods, in tropical swampland zones filled with venomous organisms, and on active volcanic island systems where the ground literally glows with thermal energy. She activated new imagery showing impossible human habitations in landscapes that defied survival logic. This is McMurdo Station, located in Antarctica, our southern polar continent. Humans maintain year-round operations there in atmospheric conditions that would instantly crystallize most galactic species into solid matter. This is Dubai, constructed in desert conditions where summer atmospheric temperature regularly exceeds 50 degrees Celsius. And this is Pompeii. Well, the original settlement was completely destroyed by volcanic eruption, but humans immediately rebuilt it in exactly the same location because they appreciated the geographic advantages. The crystalline delegate from Shard Prime was now resonating at frequencies so high they were approaching the threshold where molecular bonds begin to destabilize. But surely, Commander ZYX-Tal managed through his failing translation systems. Your species has developed advanced protective technologies to shield yourselves from these environmental hazards? Dr. Rodriguez looked thoughtful, as if considering a complex philosophical question. Well, yes and no. We've developed technology, certainly, but we've also used our technological advancement to put ourselves into even more dangerous situations. For example, we've created flying machines that transport humans through our toxic atmosphere at high velocities. We've built submersible vehicles specifically designed to explore the crushing depths of our planetary water systems. Did I mention our ocean systems yet? Without waiting for a response, a rhetorical habit that was beginning to seem distinctly threatening, the holographic display shifted to show vast bodies of liquid that covered most of the planetary surface. Earth is approximately 71% covered by liquid water systems. Now, water might initially sound benign, but our ocean systems average about 4 kilometers in depth, with trench formations extending over 11 kilometers below surface level. The hydrostatic pressure at those depths would instantly compress most galactic species into high-density matter states. New imagery appeared showing oceanic phenomena that seemed designed by malevolent intelligence. Our oceans also experience tsunami systems, those water walls I mentioned earlier that can reach heights of 30 meters while traveling at atmospheric craft velocities. They're generated by underwater seismic activity, submarine volcanic eruptions, or massive geological displacement events. Ocean current systems can transport objects thousands of kilometers across planetary distances. Some currents maintain temperatures hot enough to cause thermal tissue damage, others cold enough to induce instant hypothermic death. She paused again, apparently noticing that several delegates had begun what appeared to be species-specific emergency shutdown procedures to prevent complete psychological collapse. Are you certain you want me to continue? I haven't even addressed our biological hazard systems yet, and I can observe that some of you are experiencing what appears to be severe processing overload. Should I move on to our predator ecosystems? Or would you prefer to hear about our microscopic death systems first? The silence that followed Dr. Rodriguez's casual question about predator preferences was broken only by what sounded like a Zephyrian delegate experiencing the methane-breathing equivalent of hyperventilation, a rhythmic whistling that indicated severe respiratory distress. The collective psychological state of the amphitheater had devolved beyond mere shock into what xenopsychologists would classify as species-wide existential crisis management. Perhaps, Ambassador Velterra managed weakly, her 6 arms now completely wrapped around her torso in a defensive configuration that made her resemble a living fortress preparing for siege. You could begin with something relatively small for our mental processing stability. Excellent tactical thinking, Dr. Rodriguez said with the bright enthusiasm of someone delighted to find a fellow strategic mind. The holographic display shifted to show what appeared to be completely empty space, then began an exponential zoom into microscopic dimensions that seemed to descend into increasingly alien realms of existence. These are bacteria, single-cellular organisms that exist in literally every environment on Earth. And when I say every environment, I mean that quite literally. They live in our soil matrices, our water systems, our atmospheric compositions, inside every multicellular organism on the planet including humans, and in environments so extreme that they shouldn't theoretically support any form of life whatsoever. The image revealed vast colonies of microscopic entities that moved with what appeared to be predatory intelligence. Most bacterial organisms are either benign or beneficial to larger life forms, but the pathogenic varieties represent some of the most efficient killing mechanisms in known biological science. This specimen is Clostridium botulinum, which produces botulinum toxin, one of the most lethal biological compounds ever identified. A single gram of purified botulinum toxin contains sufficient lethality to kill approximately 14,000 adult humans. It grows spontaneously in improperly preserved food materials, which means humans must maintain constant vigilance about our nutritional storage systems. She gestured with casual academic interest, and new microscopic horrors appeared on the display. This rather elegant organism is Vibrio cholerae, the causative agent of cholera. It has systematically killed millions of humans throughout our recorded history by inducing rapid dehydration through violent gastrointestinal distress. This is Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which specifically targets respiratory systems and can remain completely dormant within a human host for decades before suddenly activating and consuming lung tissue. And this particularly impressive specimen is Streptococcus pyogenes, which causes necrotizing fasciitis. Essentially, it devours human flesh while the host remains conscious. Commander ZYX-Dal's exoskeleton was now producing a continuous low-frequency humming that indicated his entire crystalline nervous system was operating in emergency mode. Your nutritional systems contain concentrated lethal toxins? Oh, not exclusively our food sources, Dr. Rodriguez clarified with helpful enthusiasm. These microscopic predators exist in our water supplies, our atmospheric systems, on every surface we contact, and throughout our immediate environment. Current scientific estimates suggest that humans carry approximately 39 trillion bacterial cells within our bodies at any given moment, roughly equal to the number of human cells. Most provide beneficial symbiotic functions, but the pathogenic varieties require constant immune system warfare to prevent immediate death. Dr. Rodriguez continued with the enthusiasm of someone sharing fascinating trivia. But bacterial organisms represent just the foundational level of our microscopic predator ecosystem. Let me introduce you to our viral systems. The display shifted to show even smaller entities that seem to exist at the boundary between life and non-life. Viruses represent a particularly elegant form of biological warfare. They're not technically alive in the conventional sense, but they hijack living cellular systems to reproduce themselves. This is influenza, which mutates so rapidly that our immune systems can never develop permanent resistance. The 1918 influenza pandemic killed between 50 and 100 million humans in approximately 2 years. This is variola major, commonly known as smallpox, which killed an estimated 300 million people during the 20th century alone before humans managed to eliminate it through aggressive vaccination warfare. New viral structures appeared, each more geometrically threatening than the last. This is the rabies virus transmitted through animal bite wounds. It maintains a 99.9% fatality rate once clinical symptoms manifest, and it specifically targets neurological systems, causing extreme aggression and hydrophobia, fear of water. This is Ebola hemorrhagic fever virus, which causes systematic bleeding from all bodily orifices while the host remains conscious. And this is human immunodeficiency virus, which attacks the immune system itself, leaving humans completely vulnerable to opportunistic infections. A delegate from the rear, one of the smaller, more cautious species known for their risk avoidance strategies, managed to generate enough coherent thought to operate their translation interface. How is survival possible under constant microscopic siege warfare? Evolution and technological advancement, Dr. Rodriguez replied with evident pride. Humans have developed immune systems that conduct continuous military operations against microscopic invaders. Our bodies are essentially biological battlefields where millions of cellular-level conflicts occur every planetary rotation. We've also developed medical science. Essentially, we manufacture artificial chemical weapons specifically designed to eliminate bacterial and viral threats while minimizing damage to human tissues. She paused thoughtfully, observing the various stress responses manifesting throughout the amphitheater. But I suppose you're interested in our visible predators now? The organisms you can actually observe while they're attempting to kill you, without waiting for confirmation. A rhetorical pattern that had become genuinely ominous. The display shifted to show a massive oceanic predator that seemed designed by nightmares. This is Carcharodon carcharias, the great white shark. Approximately 6 meters of evolutionary perfection. They've remained essentially unchanged for 400 million years because they achieved optimal killing efficiency and require no further development. They can detect a single drop of blood dissolved in 100 liters of water and can generate bite forces exceeding 18,000 newtons. The image zoomed to show the creature's mouth, revealing rows of serrated teeth that seem designed for maximum tissue destruction. Those dental structures are continuously replaced throughout the organism's lifetime. A single shark can produce and utilize 35,000 teeth during its operational period. They attack from below at velocities up to 56 kilometers per hour, often achieving complete surprise. Despite this obvious lethality, humans regularly engage in recreational swimming in shark-populated waters for entertainment purposes. A new image materialized showing a massive terrestrial predator. This is Ursus arctos horribilis, the North American grizzly bear. They achieve masses up to 600 kilograms, can maintain running speeds of 50 kilometers per hour, and possess claws longer than human fingers with sufficient strength to decapitate an adult human with a single strike. Their bite force can crush skulls. Humans consider camping in bear-inhabited territories a popular family recreational activity. The display cycled through increasingly impressive predators with mechanical precision. This is Panthera leo, the African lion, apex predator of savanna ecosystems, hunting in coordinated pack formations with the ability to leap 11 meters horizontally. This is Crocodylus porosus, the saltwater crocodile, which possesses the most powerful bite force of any living creature and can remain completely motionless for hours before attacking. This is Ursus maritimus, the polar bear, which is essentially a larger, more aggressive grizzly bear that inhabits frozen wasteland environments. Dr. Rodriguez noticed that several delegates were now exhibiting what appeared to be complete cognitive shutdown protocols to prevent psychological system failure. Oh, but these are merely our large-scale predators. We also maintain venomous serpents capable of killing with single-bite wounds, arachnids that inject tissue-necrotizing poisons, scorpions with neurotoxic stings, and cnidarians with tentacles that can cause immediate cardiac arrest. The display showed a small, brilliantly colored amphibian. This charming creature is Philibates terribilis, the golden poison frog. It measures approximately 5 centimeters in length and contains sufficient toxin to kill 10 adult humans. Indigenous human populations learned to extract this poison and apply it to projectile weapons for hunting purposes. And speaking of indigenous human populations, Dr. Rodriguez paused, surveying the amphitheater with that distinctly unsettling human expression. I should probably mention that the most statistically dangerous predator on Earth is actually Homo sapiens, humans themselves. We've maintained a state of nearly continuous interspecies warfare throughout our entire recorded history. We've developed weapon systems ranging from simple impact tools to nuclear devices capable of sterilizing entire continents. We've eliminated more of our own species through organized violence than all natural disasters, diseases, and predator attacks combined. The absolute silence in the amphitheater was now so complete that individual life support systems could be heard operating. But here's the truly remarkable aspect. Dr. Rodriguez continued with conversational ease. Despite constant assault from microscopic organisms, large predators, environmental hazards, and our own species' violent tendencies, the human population has expanded from a few million to over 8 billion individuals in just the last 10,000 years. We've become the dominant species on a planet that operates as a continuous death trap. She looked around at the paralyzed faces of galactic delegates with what might have been genuine curiosity. Should I continue with our environmental toxin systems? Or would you prefer to hear about our extreme meteorological phenomena? I haven't yet addressed our hurricane, tornado, lightning, or hailstone bombardment systems. The amphitheater remained in absolute silence for what seemed like an eternity in diplomatic time. Nearly 2 full minutes during which the only sounds were the increasingly frantic life support systems of various species attempting to maintain basic biological functions under extreme psychological stress. Several delegates had entered what appeared to be protective hibernation states, while others were displaying the physiological equivalent of existential shock. Finally, a delegate from the Analytical Consensus Collective, a species renowned throughout the galaxy for their logical processing capabilities and systematic approach to problem-solving, managed to reactivate their translation interface. When they spoke, their voice carried the unmistakable harmonic patterns of a mind struggling to process information that fundamentally challenged their understanding of reality. Dr. Rodriguez. The voice emerged barely above a whisper, carrying the weight of species-wide cognitive dissonance. The data you have presented, this cannot represent accurate planetary analysis. No celestial body could maintain this density of hostile environmental factors while simultaneously supporting complex civilization development and population expansion. Dr. Rodriguez looked genuinely puzzled by their skepticism, as if they had questioned something as fundamental as basic mathematics or the existence of gravity itself. I'm terribly sorry, but are you suggesting that my presentation contains factual inaccuracies? Would you prefer that I provide comprehensive documentation? I have geological survey databases, biological specimen classification systems, meteorological records spanning multiple centuries, paleontological evidence, and real-time environmental monitoring data from thousands of observation stations across Earth's surface. No, the delegate responded with obvious haste, their translation matrix conveying something approaching panic. We do not question the veracity of your information. The issue is conceptual. How is biological existence possible under these conditions? How does any organism achieve survival, let alone evolutionary dominance? Dr. Rodriguez's expression brightened with what appeared to be genuine intellectual enthusiasm, as if someone had finally asked the truly interesting question. Oh, now that's the fascinating core issue. You see, what you've been classifying as Deathworld factors throughout this conference, humans simply consider normal environmental parameters. We don't call them death factors. We call them Tuesday morning conditions. She activated the holographic display again, showing human settlements distributed across environments that defied every galactic standard for habitability. Humans don't merely survive these conditions. We've learned to thrive within them and actively exploit them for strategic advantages. We've constructed our major population centers in earthquake-prone zones because volcanic soil provides exceptional agricultural productivity. We've established fishing communities directly in hurricane migration paths because storm systems bring nutrient-rich oceanic conditions that support marine ecosystem abundance. We've created mountain settlements in avalanche-prone regions because we find the recreational skiing opportunities enjoyable. The display showed humans engaged in activities that appeared to be deliberate death-seeking behavior. We've systematically converted survival challenges into recreational entertainment systems. Rock climbing, deliberately ascending vertical cliff faces using minimal safety equipment for pleasure. Scuba diving, swimming recreationally among large predatory organisms in their natural hunting environments. Extreme skiing, rapidly descending mountainous terrain at high velocity for entertainment value. We have entire economic sectors dedicated to what we call adventure tourism, where humans pay significant amounts of currency to place themselves in dangerous situations for enjoyment. Commander ZYX Stahl's voice emerged through failing translation systems, the harmonics indicating his crystalline nervous system was operating far beyond normal parameters. You voluntarily pay to experience danger? Absolutely, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed with evident delight. Some of our most expensive recreational experiences involve traveling to the most dangerous locations on Earth. Safari expeditions to observe large predators at close range. Volcano tourism to witness active eruption events. Storm chasing, deliberately following hurricane and tornado systems for observation purposes. We even have something called base jumping, where humans deliberately throw themselves from cliff formations wearing minimal protective equipment and deploy fabric parachutes at the last possible moment. Dr. Rodriguez paused to take another casual sip from her hydration container, an action that now seemed almost deliberately provocative given the context. But I think you're fundamentally misunderstanding the larger evolutionary picture. You see, all these death factors you've been discussing aren't obstacles to human development. They're training systems. The amphitheater achieved a level of silence so profound that individual cardiovascular systems could be heard operating among the organic species. Every generation of humans grows up facing these environmental challenges as normal childhood development. The individuals who survive to reproductive age pass on their genetic adaptations and accumulated knowledge to subsequent generations. Over millions of years of evolutionary pressure, we've been systematically forged by a planetary environment that never stops attempting to eliminate us. She activated new displays showing human physiological and neurological capabilities. We've developed pattern recognition systems that border on predictive capability, allowing us to identify potential threats before they fully manifest. Our reflexes can respond to danger stimuli in microsecond timeframes. Our immune systems can adapt to previously unknown pathogenic organisms in real time. Our psychological resilience allows us to maintain functional decision-making under extreme stress conditions that would cause most species to experience complete cognitive shutdown. New imagery appeared showing human settlements in environments that should have been completely uninhabitable. Our bodies are essentially biological weapons platforms optimized for hostile environment survival. We can maintain biological functions without food for weeks, without water for days, and continue operating effectively across temperature ranges that would immediately kill most galactic species. Our brains continuously run threat assessment algorithms, simultaneously monitoring thousands of environmental variables for potential danger indicators. The display shifted to show human expansion across impossible terrain and into space itself. We've successfully established permanent settlements in deep oceanic environments, polar regions where atmospheric temperature never rises above freezing, desert zones where surface materials can melt metal, tropical swamplands filled with venomous organisms, and volcanic regions where the ground literally glows with thermal energy. We've even begun colonizing the vacuum of space because Earth's environment had become insufficiently challenging. Ambassador Velterra's voice emerged as barely a whisper, her translation systems struggling to convey the concept. Insufficiently Challenging? Well, certainly. Once you've achieved mastery over a planetary environment with 47 major death factors operating simultaneously, other environments begin to seem rather mundane by comparison. That's actually the primary motivation behind our space exploration programs. We're seeking new environmental challenges that can provide appropriate stimulation for continued human development. Dr. Rodriguez looked around the amphitheater with what appeared to be dawning comprehension. I'm beginning to understand the source of your earlier pride regarding worlds with 3 to 6 death factors. For most galactic species, that would indeed represent an extraordinary survival achievement requiring millions of years of specialized evolutionary adaptation. But you must understand the human perspective. We consider a planetary environment with only 6 death factors to be what we classify as garden world conditions. She paused, allowing this concept to penetrate the shocked minds of her audience. A planet where the primary dangers are predictable acid precipitation, manageable seismic activity, and metal-dissolving predators? That sounds like an exceptionally pleasant vacation destination. Relaxing, even. The kind of place humans would choose for therapeutic recovery from more stressful environments. The crystalline delegate from Shard Prime had begun resonating at frequencies so extreme that their molecular structure was approaching critical stability thresholds. Dr. Rodriguez, Commander ZYX-Tal managed through his failing systems. Are you stating that humans would consider our homeworlds safe environments? Oh, absolutely. In fact, I suspect humans would find your worlds quite attractive for colonization purposes. We've always been drawn to frontier environments that offer interesting challenges. A world with stable acid rain patterns would be perfect for certain specialized agricultural applications. Predictable seismic activity could be harnessed for geothermal energy generation. And predators that dissolve metal? That represents a potentially valuable biological resource for industrial applications. She looked directly at Commander ZYX-Tal with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. How is your world's defensive infrastructure, incidentally? Any significant military installations or planetary protection systems? Because I should probably mention that humans have a documented tendency to expand quite rapidly once we identify suitable colonization targets. The silence that followed was filled with the sounds of various species stress responses reaching critical emergency levels. But please don't concern yourselves, Dr. Rodriguez said with cheerful reassurance. Humans are generally peaceful explorers and traders. We only tend to become aggressive when we perceive threats to our survival or expansion. And honestly, what could possibly threaten a species that considers your deadliest worlds to be recreational destinations? The silence stretched on until finally, a brave delegate from the methane-breathing Zephyrians managed to activate their translator. Dr. Rodriguez, if Earth is so dangerous and humans are so adaptable, why haven't we encountered your species before? Where have you been? Dr. Rodriguez looked genuinely surprised. Oh, we've been right here the whole time. Earth is in what you call the Sol system, third planet from the star. We've been broadcasting radio signals for over a century, sending out space probes, even landing on our moon multiple times. She paused, looking puzzled. Actually, that raises a question I've been meaning to ask. How exactly do you classify star systems for colonization? Do you have some kind of survey system? Ambassador Velterra managed to respond, though her voice carried what the translator interpreted as deep unease. Yes. We have the Galactic Habitability Index. Systems are classified from Class A, most suitable for life, down to Class Z. Completely uninhabitable. Interesting. What class is the Sol system? There was a long pause before Velterra answered. Class Z7. Dr. Rodriguez blinked. I'm sorry, did you say Z7? What does that mean exactly? Commander ZYX-Tal's exoskeleton had resumed its stress clicking. Class Z is for systems considered absolutely uninhabitable. The numerical suffix indicates how far beyond normal uninhabitable parameters the system falls. We've never encountered a Class Z7 system that wasn't completely sterile. Ah, Dr. Rodriguez said thoughtfully. And what made you classify Sol as Z7? The delegates exchanged what appeared to be uncomfortable glances across species barriers. The star is a Class G yellow dwarf, Ambassador Velterra explained reluctantly. Highly unstable, prone to radiation flares. The system contains multiple gas giants with chaotic gravitational fields. The third planet showed signs of extreme geological instability, volatile weather patterns, and an atmosphere with toxic oxygen concentrations. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. That's fair, our sun does have solar flares. They can disrupt electronics and communications. Sometimes they're strong enough to create aurora displays, dancing lights in our sky that humans consider quite beautiful. Beautiful? The word came from multiple translators simultaneously. Oh yes, we have entire tourism industries built around observing aurora. People travel thousands of kilometers to watch radiation storms create light shows in our atmosphere. She continued conversationally, but you mentioned gas giants with chaotic gravitational fields. You must mean Jupiter and Saturn. They actually provide excellent protection for Earth. Their gravity wells catch most asteroids and comets that might otherwise impact our planet. We consider them beneficial. A small delegate from near the front managed to squeak out, beneficial radiation storms? Well, they can be problematic for our electronics, but humans have learned to adapt. We build shielding, develop hardened systems, and time our activities around solar weather patterns. Some of our most advanced technology was developed specifically to function during high radiation events. Dr. Rodriguez activated her display again, showing various human space installations. These are our orbital stations and satellites. They're designed to operate continuously in the radiation environment around Earth. We've been launching humans into space for decades, including long-duration missions to our orbital stations. The display showed humans working in what appeared to be the vacuum of space. Our astronauts regularly perform spacewalks, that's working outside the protection of spacecraft while orbiting at 28,000 kilometers per hour in hard vacuum while being bombarded by cosmic radiation. Another long silence fell over the amphitheater. Dr. Rodriguez, Commander ZYX Tal said slowly, when your species developed space travel, what was your first reaction to the vacuum of space? Dr. Rodriguez looked puzzled by the question. What do you mean? Most species find space terrifying. The vacuum, the radiation, the vast emptiness. It usually takes generations to overcome the psychological barriers to space travel. Oh! Dr. Rodriguez laughed, a sound that somehow made several predatory species instinctively check for escape routes. We found it exciting. Humans have always been explorers. When we realized there was an entire universe out there, we couldn't wait to see it. She gestured enthusiastically. Some of our most celebrated heroes are astronauts and cosmonauts, humans who volunteered to be launched into space on controlled explosions, knowing that any number of things could kill them. We've had humans volunteer for one-way missions to other planets just for the chance to explore. One-way missions? Ambassador Velterra's voice carried an emotion the translator struggled to interpret. Well, with current technology, some destinations are too far for round trips. But humans have volunteered anyway. We have a saying, space is hard, but humans are harder. Dr. Rodriguez looked around the amphitheater thoughtfully. You know, this explains a lot about galactic politics. If you've been classifying systems like Sol as uninhabitable, you've probably been avoiding entire regions of space that humans would consider prime real estate. She activated a new display showing a galactic map. Could you show me which systems you've classified as Class Y or Z? The ones you consider completely uninhabitable. Reluctantly, Ambassador Velterra activated her own display. Vast swaths of the galactic map lit up in red, indicating forbidden zones. Dr. Rodriguez studied the display with growing excitement. Oh my! Oh, this is wonderful! Look at all this available space. And these systems here. She pointed to several clusters. These are showing signs of geological activity, variable stars, complex gravitational fields. These look absolutely perfect for human colonization. Perfect. The word escaped from multiple translators in what sounded like horror. Well, yes, humans prefer challenging environments. Stable, predictable worlds are fine for agriculture and manufacturing, but we get bored easily. These systems you've marked as uninhabitable look like they'd provide exactly the kind of stimulating environment humans thrive in. Dr. Rodriguez paused, noticing the expressions around the amphitheater. I'm starting to suspect that we may have some significant philosophical differences about what constitutes a desirable living environment. A delegate from the back, one of the smaller, more cautious species, managed to activate their translator. Dr. Rodriguez, when humans encounter a dangerous situation, what is your typical response? That depends on the type of danger, she replied thoughtfully. If it's an immediate threat, we usually try to neutralize it. If it's an environmental hazard, we typically adapt to it or find ways to exploit it. If it's a predator, we study it to understand its weaknesses. She paused. Why do you ask? Most galactic species, when we encounter danger, we flee. We find safer environments. We avoid risks whenever possible. Dr. Rodriguez looked genuinely puzzled. But then how do you grow? How do you advance? Challenge is what drives innovation, adaptation, improvement. Without pressure, systems tend toward stagnation. We prefer stability. Dr. Rodriguez said, and something in her tone made several delegates shift uncomfortably. That's interesting. So when you encounter a problem, your first instinct is to retreat rather than solve it. It's safer. Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, and the amphitheater fell silent as well. I think, she said slowly, I'm beginning to understand the fundamental difference between humans and the rest of galactic civilization. She activated her display again, showing the image of Earth. You see this planet as a horror show, a world so dangerous that no sane species would choose to live there. But humans see it as home. Every challenge, every threat, every disaster that should have killed us instead made us stronger. The image shifted to show human cities, human achievements, human exploration. We didn't just survive Earth, we conquered it. We turned its dangers into opportunities, its threats into resources, its challenges into stepping stones. And now that we've mastered the ultimate death world, we're looking for new challenges. She looked directly at the assembled delegates. Which brings me to an important question. How exactly does galactic civilization handle conflicts? What do you do when different species have competing interests? The delegates exchanged nervous glances. Commander Zyxtal answered hesitantly. We negotiate. We form committees. We seek consensus through diplomatic channels. And if diplomacy fails, we involve mediators, neutral parties. We have extensive legal frameworks. But what if mediation fails? What if someone simply refuses to cooperate? The silence stretched uncomfortably long. We don't have much experience with that situation, Ambassador Velterra admitted quietly. Dr. Rodriguez nodded slowly. I see. So galactic civilization is essentially built on the assumption that all parties will act reasonably and in good faith. Yes. And you've never encountered a species that simply doesn't? Not until now, came a small voice from the back. Dr. Rodriguez's smile returned, and this time there was definitely something predatory about it. Well, she said cheerfully, this should be very interesting. The amphitheater had achieved a level of silence so profound that it seemed to bend space-time around itself. Dr. Rodriguez stood calmly at the podium, still displaying that distinctly human expression of pleasant curiosity, while around her 1,000 representatives of galactic civilization processed the complete restructuring of their understanding of universal power dynamics. The stress response indicators had moved beyond emergency levels into territories that most species medical databases didn't even have classifications for. Finally, a small, trembling voice emerged from somewhere in the rear sections, one of the smaller, more cautious species whose entire evolutionary strategy had been based on avoiding anything remotely resembling conflict or danger. Dr. Rodriguez. The voice carried harmonics that suggested the speaker was operating on the very edge of psychological collapse. What are humanity's intentions regarding galactic civilization? Dr. Rodriguez looked genuinely surprised by the question. as if they had asked her to explain why stars existed or why mathematics worked. Intentions? That's a fascinating question, but I'm afraid humans don't really operate with unified species-wide intentions. We rarely achieve consensus on anything as a collective entity. Earth currently maintains nearly 200 separate nation-states, each with their own governmental systems, cultural frameworks, ideological structures, and strategic objectives. Getting humans to agree on anything beyond basic survival needs typically requires external pressure or exceptional circumstances. She paused thoughtfully, consulting her handheld device with the casual ease of someone checking the weather. But if you're asking what individual humans and human organizations might choose to do once they learn about the existence of galactic civilization, well, that's considerably more predictable based on historical behavioral patterns. And that would be, the question emerged from multiple translation matrices simultaneously, creating an eerie harmonic effect that seemed to resonate with existential dread. Exploration, primarily, Dr. Rodriguez replied with the enthusiasm of someone discussing their favorite hobby: trade negotiations and economic partnerships, scientific research and knowledge acquisition programs, cultural exchange initiatives, meeting new species and learning about different evolutionary adaptations. She gestured at the still-displayed galactic map with its vast red forbidden zones, and almost certainly extensive colonization of those stellar systems you've classified as uninhabitable. Ambassador Velterra's voice emerged as barely more than a whisper, her translation system struggling to convey concepts that her species had no psychological framework for processing. Colonization of forbidden zones? Oh, absolutely. When humans learn that there are entire regions of space considered too dangerous for galactic civilization, the first response will be overwhelming curiosity about what we're missing. Human exploration psychology is fundamentally driven by the principle that if something is labeled impossible or too dangerous, it immediately becomes our primary target for investigation. Dr. Rodriguez activated her display again, showing various human technological and exploration achievements that seem to defy rational risk assessment. We've already initiated terraforming experimental programs on Mars, another planet in our local system that you would probably classify as hostile to life. We're developing mission profiles for Europa, which is a moon of Jupiter covered in radioactive ice and subjected to constant gravitational stress. We have preliminary designs for generation ships capable of interstellar travel with multi-century voyage durations. Learning about your forbidden zones will simply provide us with more precise target destinations for expansion programs. A delegate from the middle section, one of the species known for strategic thinking and long-term planning, managed to activate their translation interface through what appeared to be tremendous effort. Dr. Rodriguez, you mentioned that humans don't achieve species consensus easily. Doesn't this create internal conflicts and territorial disputes? Oh, constantly and continuously, Dr. Rodriguez confirmed with what seemed like pride rather than concern. Humans have maintained a state of almost perpetual competitive conflict for our entire recorded history. We've had 2 global warfare events in just the last century that involved virtually every nation-state on Earth simultaneously, plus countless smaller regional conflicts, economic competitions, ideological disputes, and resource acquisition wars. The strategic species delegate made a sound that their translator interpreted as profound civilizational alarm. And you resolve these conflicts through what methodologies? Usually through superior strategic planning, better technological applications, more effective resource management, or overwhelming force projection. Dr. Rodriguez replied with the same conversational tone she might use to discuss meal preferences, though sometimes through diplomatic negotiation and economic pressure, if the stakes aren't considered sufficiently important to justify more aggressive approaches. Dr. Rodriguez noticed the growing expressions of horror throughout the amphitheater and seemed to interpret them as intellectual curiosity. But you shouldn't be concerned about human internal conflicts. Historical analysis shows that humans become significantly less likely to fight each other when there are external challenges or opportunities to focus our competitive energies. Having an entire galaxy to explore, colonize, and develop should keep human civilization productively occupied for several centuries at minimum. Dr. Rodriguez, Commander ZYXTAL managed through his failing translation systems. His voice carrying harmonics that indicated complete structural failure was imminent. When you reference superior firepower and overwhelming force projection, what technological capabilities are we discussing? Well, that varies considerably depending on the conflict scale and strategic objectives, she replied thoughtfully. For individual disputes, humans have developed weapons ranging from simple kinetic projectile systems to directed energy applications and molecular disruptors. For larger territorial conflicts, we maintain everything from chemical explosive devices to nuclear weapons capable of eliminating entire urban centers and rendering large geographic areas uninhabitable for extended periods. She paused, apparently noticing the deepening expressions of terror around her. Oh, but we also have extensive non-lethal options. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, sonic disruption systems, chemical agents that cause temporary neural incapacitation, and biological weapons that target specific genetic markers. Humans actually prefer to capture and convert opposition forces when possible. Defeated enemies often become extremely valuable allies once they understand the mathematical certainty of resistance failure. The silence that followed was so complete that individual life support systems could be heard operating throughout the amphitheater. But really, Dr. Rodriguez continued with cheerful reassurance. What could humans possibly want from established galactic civilization beyond knowledge sharing and trade partnerships? We're primarily interested in those uninhabitable zones you've been avoiding. Though I suppose there might eventually be some territorial boundary discussions needed, particularly regarding stellar systems in close proximity to Earth. She looked around the amphitheater with what appeared to be genuine curiosity about their obvious distress. Actually, this raises an interesting legal question about territorial sovereignty. Under galactic law, what exactly grants a species claim to a stellar system? Ambassador Velterra answered with obvious reluctance, as if each word was being extracted under torture. Historically, the first species to establish permanent presence in a system gains territorial rights and resource extraction privileges. Permanent presence, such as functional colonies? Yes. And these systems you've classified as Class Y and Z, none of your species have established colonial presence there? They're uninhabitable to us. Right, uninhabitable to your species. But if humans successfully established colonial operations in those systems, Dr. Rodriguez let the implication hang in the air like a gathering storm. The realization hit the amphitheater like a kinetic weapon strike. Dr. Rodriguez continued with the casual tone of someone discussing routine administrative procedures. Of course, humans would be entirely reasonable about territorial arrangements. We'd probably offer very generous terms for resource-sharing agreements, trade partnerships, and scientific collaboration programs. We understand that some of you might have theoretical claims to systems you've never actually managed to visit. She paused, studying the paralyzed faces of galactic representatives with what appeared to be dawning comprehension. Though I should probably mention that humans tend to be somewhat impatient with extended bureaucratic processes. If diplomatic negotiations become too time-consuming, we usually proceed with our operational plans and resolve the legal complexities afterward through more direct communication methods. Commander ZYXTAL's voice emerged as barely a whisper through his failing systems. Dr. Rodriguez, approximately how many humans currently exist? About 8.2 billion on Earth currently, with population growth rates that have been expanding exponentially for centuries. But our current population density is approaching Earth's comfortable carrying capacity, and we've been developing space-based habitat technologies to accommodate continued expansion. Learning about all this available territory in the galaxy should resolve our population pressure concerns quite effectively. 8 billion. Well, that's just our current Earth-based population. Once we begin establishing interstellar colonies, demographic models suggest those numbers should increase dramatically. Frontier environments historically encourage accelerated population growth among human settlers. Dr. Rodriguez gathered her materials and prepared to leave the podium with the satisfied air of someone who had just completed a successful presentation. I should probably return to Earth to report what I've learned here today. I'm certain our governments will be extremely interested in all those uninhabited systems you've identified for us. And our private exploration corporations will probably want to begin organizing expeditionary missions immediately. She paused at the edge of the platform, looking back at the assembly of frozen delegates. Thank you all for such an enlightening and productive conference. This has been incredibly valuable intelligence gathering. I'm absolutely certain we'll be interacting much more frequently in the very near future. As Dr. Rodriguez walked toward the amphitheater exit, her footsteps echoing with what sounded distinctly like the rhythm of inevitable conquest, a small voice from the back managed to whisper the question that every species present was thinking. What have we done? But Dr. Rodriguez was already gone, returning to a species of 8.2 billion apex predators who had just learned that the galaxy was filled with undefended territory that everyone else was too frightened to claim. The age of human expansion had begun. In the silence that followed, Ambassador Velterra's final log entry would read simply, "We thought we were the survivors of Deathworlds. We were wrong. We were the survivors of Garden Worlds who had the misfortune to live in a galaxy where the real Deathworld survivors finally found us." Somewhere in the distance, alarm systems began to activate as the reality of humanity's existence spread through galactic communication networks. The universe had changed forever.